Heartache is something that needs to be grieved and needs to be grieved properly. What's going on? Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you are new to this channel, we talk about mental health through pop culture and introduce you to a couple cool flicks along the way. My name is Captain Nostalgia, and today we are entering into our coverage of the Boston Underground Film Festival. Full disclosure, I did put in a couple of requests. This is the only one I've actually been able to obtain. So this may end up actually being the only film we cover for this year's festival. But let's talk about Smoking Causes Coughing. This movie is an appropriate satire for the current age of cinema. It tells the story of 5 superheroes in training that are sent away to a retreat to better understand their communication skills, and yeah, this movie's absurd. If you've seen Psycho Gorman from a couple years ago, if you haven't, please go run to Shudder and check it out. It is one of the best horror films we have gotten in the last 10 years. Gorman kind of channeled that inner love of the Power Rangers and kind of made this like larger than life, really just wild horror comedy. And I interviewed the director. I'll provide a link at the end of this video so you guys can check it out. But in that vein, Smoking Causes Coughing feels like it takes that aesthetic that Psycho Gorman did of taking these larger than life characters that are seemingly Power Rangers, throwing a little bit of Tales from the Crypt in there, and creating a movie that feels like it was done through the lens of John Waters. Should also be worth noting that, and I am terrible at names, so if I mispronounce this name, I'm really sorry, but Quentin Dupieux, who is the writer-director of this, also made Rubber. If you don't know what Rubber is a horror film that tells the story of a tire that becomes alive and kills people. So yeah, if you've seen that movie, you understand what you're in for with smoking. The humor in this movie is just absolutely absurd. And Dupree doesn't just limit it to the comedy of the film being absurd. I mean, the fact that this is like normal in this like universe where you have grown adults being Power Rangers fighting people in rubber suits is just kind of a absurd idea to begin with. Throw in the element of how this film has like almost like an anthological feel to it, the way that it creates these sub-stories within it while the characters are at the retreat. And this movie is not only a lot of fun, but also takes a lot of risks. And even when those risks don't pay off, I still have a lot of respect for Dupree for even swinging as hard as he does in this movie. The special effects really lean in to that whole John Waters camp with a touch of the Power Rangers, because it does carry both of those all together, whether you're talking about the costume designs or you're talking about how the monsters are depicted in this movie. I think that it carries both of those camps and carries them very well. Like, the acting in this movie across the board is really well done. Sometimes in comedy, especially one as insane as this, it's really hard to kind of like expect the actors to really lean into it and really operate in that comedic timing. But across the board, these 5 characters that we follow really do an exceptional job at bringing this just insane film to life. Just to kind of give you a little bit of level of the absurdity you're about to find, you will find in this movie. So in the Power Rangers lore, there are essentially 5 teenagers who all have Megazords or some variation thereof of the Megazords that come together to kind of create this super kaiju robot. When our heroes come together, appropriately entitled Tobacco Force, they give their victims cancer. In fact, the 5 team members are named after elements that cause cancer from smoking. This is the type of comedy and like absurdity you are buckled into for this film. I think this film does team dynamic really well. And one of the things that I feel like you don't really see a whole lot of in movies like smoking is the fact that when you work with someone for a while, there's going to be tension and there's going to be expectation that kind of comes at the forefront, and you're just kind of experiencing that. I don't like that that's the starting place where we actually meet our crew, because as fantastical as this film gets, it does really lay on a good, like, grounded feel for the most part. Speaking of the fantastical elements, I think the outside of like the giant rubber suit monsters, this movie's like fantastical elements really catch you off guard, and there are a few moments in this that like just took me by complete surprise, and I loved every second of it. There are two complaints that I really have about this movie. First off, its length. This movie clocks in at a mere 80 minutes. Granted, I think this movie could have gone on probably for another half hour and I would have been glued to it, but I'm here for the 80 minutes. Begrudgingly, of course. But I think it's because of that 80 minutes and because of how busy the film can feel at times that these characters largely feel kind of paper thin. Like, these characters feel really one note. Just two examples real quick. There's a character named Mercure. I think I said that right. But his entire like thing that makes his character is that he is a devoted father and husband. Then there's a character named Nicotine, and her entire thing is that she's in love with her weird mutant rat boss. That's like her whole thing, like throughout the course of the film. There's nothing else. And maybe you don't need character development for a film like this, but I definitely would have liked to kind of have these characters feel a lot more fleshed out than what they currently do. Kind of feels like Dupree definitely focused a lot more on the absurdity and the originality of the picture rather than actually fleshing out some of these characters. And that's kind of the reason why I think that this movie could have benefited from an extra like 15 to 30 minutes, because you could have allowed that character dynamic to really go a lot more smoother and feel a lot more fleshed out. Well, let's run this through the Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give Smoking Causes Coughing a 3.5 out of 5. I think this movie has a lot going for it. It's smart, it's witty, and it's just downright weird. But on the flip side of that, the characters do feel really paper thin, and the runtime kind of caps it from its full potential. Smoking Causes Coughing is currently making its way throughout the festival circuits, but will be available to check out in theaters March 31st from Magnolia Pictures. And now let's talk about mental health. If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we'll take a theme of mental health out of the film which we're talking about in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. And honestly, I think when you're talking about a movie like this, it's the entire basis of the film. You have a community of people that have worked together for really long and are kind of starting to experience the early signs of burnout or fatigue, or just even like being around the same person for an extended period of time. Community is really, really valid, but there's different tiers to community, it feels like. People that'll be in your life that will that maybe you hang out with randomly at like a concert or like an amusement park that you just happen to meet and that you just never speak to again. I come from the world of touring, and aside from one person, every friend that I made along that way, I no longer speak to anymore. And it's nothing between them or myself. It's just they are friends kind of for a season. Then you have people that you're going to be romantically involved with that are going to be above every other friend and every other person in your life. And then you're going to have the group of people that are going to be with you through thick and thin that you're not romantically involved with. And those people, I would definitely say, is where we find tobacco force. Sometimes we need to have those define the relationships and kind of recalibrate the parameters of the relationship every few years. Because people grow, circumstances allow things to change, people move away, people get married. There's so many different factors in life. You know, people have kids. There's so many different factors that can change the circumstances of a relationship. And sometimes it'll be the better for your mental health, and sometimes cutting ties with that individual is also going to be better for your mental health. But I think sometimes we have this hesitancy to actually recalibrate and relook at relationships over the course of the years. We think just because we're friends with this person that the relationship's always going to be the same. And the case about it is that A, relationships are hard, and B, if one party is not willing to work and keep at that relationship, then that relationship is just is basically just going to fall apart, which can actually be detrimental to your mental health if you are close to that person. So this is a challenge to continuously just be like tobacco force and work on your relationships. Have those moments where you kind of look and recalibrate every so often to say, hey, like, how are we growing? How are we, evolving our relationship? It's these moments of clarity that you really understand, A, who your real friends are, but also at the same time, who is going to be with you through thick and thin and ultimately going to be a positive force for your mental health. As always, if you or someone you know is struggling with depression, suicide, or addiction, click the links in the show notes below and check out our mental health resource library. Smoking Causes Coughing is now playing on the festival circuit and will be entering into theaters March 31st from Magnolia Pictures. If you guys have caught this film on the festival circuit, what have you guys thought about this movie? Comment below and let me know. But as always, thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button and make sure that you guys check out the links in our descriptions below to check out where you guys can find us on social media, find the podcast, more movie reviews, and most importantly, once again, the Mental Health Resource Library.